The wind howled like a starved wolf, rattling the small log cabin perched precariously on the edge of the Kenai Peninsula. It was a sound Ilara knew intimately, the unforgiving voice of the Alaskan wilderness. Snow had been falling for 3 days, thick and relentless, burying her small home and her hope. Her last piece of firewood had burned to embers hours ago, and the biting cold was now a physical presence, seeping into her bones. Her breath plumed in the frigid air, and she huddled in a thin wool blanket, staring at the small, leather-bound Bible on her bedside table. It was her mother's, the only thing she had left of her family. Fear, cold, and a bone-deep loneliness were her constant companions. She had moved to this isolated cabin a year ago after her parents passed, seeking a life of quiet solitude. But the brutal Alaskan winter had a different plan. The cabin was a coffin, and she was already feeling the cold embrace of death. A tear froze on her cheek. She knew what she had to do, a desperate gamble. She pulled on a heavy, fur-lined coat, her hands numb as she fumbled with the buttons. With the Bible clutched tightly in one hand, she stumbled out into the blinding white chaos. The wind was a solid wall, pushing her back, and the snow was so thick she could barely see a foot in front of her. She remembered hearing about a lumberjack's camp a few miles east. It was a near-impossible trek, but her only chance. The thought of losing the Bible was a physical ache, a sacrifice of her last link to a life of warmth and family. After what felt like an eternity, she saw the faint glow of a lantern through the storm. She staggered toward it, collapsing against the side of a small, rough-hewn shed. A tall figure, bundled in heavy furs, emerged from a nearby cabin, his axe slung over his shoulder. This was Silas, a man known for his quiet, solitary nature and his immense strength. He stopped, his eyes as sharp and blue as a winter sky, widening as he saw her. "What are you doing out here?" he shouted over the roar of the wind. Ilara could barely speak, her lips blue and chattering. She held out the Bible, her hand trembling. "I have no wood. Please, I'll trade you this for firewood, my Bible. It's all I have." Silas stared at the worn book, then at her. He saw the genuine desperation in her eyes, a kind of raw vulnerability that was startling. He looked at the axe in his hand, then back at her. The gesture was unheard of, a woman alone, offering something so sacred in exchange for survival. A slow, thoughtful look came over his face, a mixture of disbelief and deep respect for the sheer force of her will. "You're mad," he said, but his voice was softer now. "Come inside." He didn't take the book. Instead, he led her to his cabin, a place of comforting warmth and the scent of pine. A fire crackled in the stone hearth. He sat her down near the fire, giving her a cup of hot broth. Ilara drank greedily, the warmth spreading through her. She felt the weight of her desperation lift slightly, replaced by an overwhelming exhaustion. "You risked your life for this," Silas said, gesturing to the book she had placed on the table between them. "Why?" "It's my family," she whispered, her voice still weak. "It's all I have left." Silas didn't say anything more. He simply looked at the book, at its worn cover and the pages marked with notes. He saw more than just a book. He saw a symbol of her faith and her past. He saw the depth of her sacrifice. He stood up, grabbed his axe, and disappeared back into the storm. Ilara watched him go, a knot of fear and confusion in her stomach. Had he gone for good? Was this some kind of cruel joke? After what felt like an eternity, he returned, burdened with an armful of split wood. He knelt before the hearth, adding the logs to the dying fire. The flames leaped back to life, filling the cabin with a comforting light. He didn't ask for the Bible. He didn't ask for anything. He simply sat down opposite her, his face a stoic mask. Ilara felt a rush of gratitude so profound it brought tears to her eyes. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I don't know how I'll ever repay you." He just shrugged, his eyes never leaving the dancing flames. The quiet between them was not awkward, but filled with a shared understanding. The storm raged outside, but inside, a new kind of warmth had begun to form. Ilara had offered her last piece of faith, and in return, she had found not just survival, but an unexpected kindness. This simple, silent act of generosity was the first link in a chain that would bind their lives together. If you want to see what happens next in this story and not miss the rest of this epic tale, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Days turned into a week, and the blizzard showed no sign of relenting. Ilara found herself a reluctant guest in Silas's cabin. The initial awkwardness had been replaced by a quiet routine. They would sit by the fire, the silence a comfortable blanket between them. Ilara would read from her Bible, her voice soft and melodic, and Silas would listen, his gaze fixed on her. He had a natural, quiet presence, and she learned he was a man of few words but profound actions. He would chop wood without complaint, tend to the fire, and silently place food in front of her. Ilara discovered that beneath his stoic exterior was a man who understood the harsh realities of their world. He had a deep, intuitive knowledge of the land, a wisdom that came from a lifetime of facing the elements. She, in turn, shared stories of her life, of her parents, and the books she loved to read. He would listen intently, a small, almost imperceptible smile touching his lips. One evening, as the storm finally began to subside, Ilara looked at Silas, truly seeing him for the first time. His face, though weathered and etched with the lines of hard work, held a quiet strength. His eyes, though often serious, held a spark of kindness. She realized that he hadn't just saved her life, he had given her back a sense of connection she thought she had lost forever. "I have to go back to my cabin soon," she said, the words heavy with a mix of anticipation and a strange sadness. "I'll need to repay you. I have some books, or some furs." Silas shook his head. "No, your Bible was enough. It was worth more than any wood." Ilara's heart swelled. "But I can't just—" He cut her off gently. "You can. It wasn't a transaction. It was a promise." "A promise?" she asked, confused. Silas looked at the fire, and for the first time his gaze was intensely serious. "A promise to the land. We help each other. We survive together." He paused, his blue eyes meeting hers. "I also promised myself that I wouldn't let you die out there." The sincerity in his voice was a revelation. It wasn't a casual statement. It was a vow, a commitment he had made to himself and to her, a stranger in a storm. Ilara felt a profound shift. The isolation she had felt for so long began to crumble. She realized that the sacrifice she had been prepared to make, the loss of her most cherished possession, had led her to a different kind of salvation, one rooted in human connection. The next day, as the sun finally broke through the clouds, painting the snow-covered landscape in a brilliant white, Silas walked her back to her cabin. It was cold, but the air was crisp and clean. When they arrived, he didn't just leave. He spent the entire day chopping wood for her, enough to last the rest of the winter. He fixed her leaky roof, mended a broken window, and even left her a small bag of dried meat and berries. He was a silent force of nature, a man who saw what was needed and provided it without a word of complaint. As he was about to leave, Ilara stopped him. "Silas, wait!" She walked up to him, her heart pounding. "You didn't take my Bible, and you've given me so much. I want to give you something in return." She reached out and took his hand, her touch gentle but firm. "I want to be your friend, and I want to make a vow to you too. Whatever you need, whenever you need it, I'll be there." Silas looked down at her hand in his, then at her face, a rare, genuine smile gracing his lips. The vow was not just a promise of help, it was an unspoken acknowledgement of a deeper connection. Their relationship, forged in the crucible of a life-threatening storm, was now founded on mutual respect, gratitude, and a promise that transcended the simple transaction of wood for a book. The Alaskan wilderness was a brutal place, but it had a way of revealing the true nature of people, and in the heart of the storm, they had found each other. The months that followed were a quiet testament to their burgeoning relationship. Ilara and Silas fell into a comfortable rhythm. He would stop by her cabin on his way to or from the logging camp, bringing her freshly caught fish or a share of his meager supplies. She, in turn, would patch his worn clothing, cook him hot meals, and read to him from her Bible or the few books she owned. Their conversations deepened, moving from the practicalities of survival to the small details of their lives. Ilara learned about his difficult past, how he had come to the Alaskan wilderness to escape a life of sorrow in the lower states. Silas learned about her dreams, her fears, and her quiet strength. Their friendship evolved into something more. The moments of shared silence were now filled with an unspoken affection. The casual touch of hands, the lingering gaze, the small, kind gestures, all were signs of a growing love. It was a love born not of grand gestures, but of simple acts of kindness, of two solitary souls finding a home in each other. One cold evening, as they sat by her fire, a fierce wind howled outside. It was a stark reminder of their first meeting. Silas looked at Ilara, his eyes reflecting the firelight. "Ilara," he said, his voice low and serious, "the winter is coming. This cabin, it's not enough, not for two of us." He was not talking about practicality, he was talking about their future. "I want to build a house, a real home, for us." Ilara's heart skipped a beat. She knew what he was asking. It was a proposal, a vow for a lifetime. "Are you sure?" she whispered. "This isn't just about the weather." He shook his head, reaching out to take her hands. "This is about the vow we made. The one you made to me in the silence, the promise to be there for each other. I want to keep that promise for the rest of my life. I want to build a life with you." Tears welled in her eyes, not of sadness, but of overwhelming joy. The loneliness that had been her constant companion for so long was finally gone. She looked at him, at the man who had seen her at her most vulnerable and had given her kindness instead of a price, the man who had honored her faith and had given her a new kind of hope. "Yes," she said, her voice full of emotion. "Yes, I want to build a home with you." Silas smiled, a deep, genuine smile that reached his eyes. He leaned in and kissed her for the first time, a gentle, tender kiss that sealed their new vow. Outside, the wind still howled, but inside, in the small, warm cabin, a new life had begun. The woman who had offered her Bible for firewood, and the man who had shown her that some things were beyond price, had found a future together. Their story was not about surviving a storm, but about finding love and humanity in its midst. And so, as the snow began to fall again, they started to plan their home, a testament to their love, a solid foundation built not just of wood, but of a promise kept. And that's the end of our story. We hope you were captivated by this tale of love and survival in the harsh Alaskan wilderness. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more incredible stories and leave a comment below to let us know what you thought.